Okay, so for those that are already with us, welcome. We're just waiting, hopefully, for a few more to join this first webinar of safeguarding season. So hopefully they'll be with us in the next few minutes, and then we can get started. So opportunity just to grab a cup of tea, or coffee, or whatever you fancy just before we get started. So I'll probably just wait another minute just to hopefully have some more join us. Okay, what's the time? Shall we get going in the hope that others who have registered to attend will join? So welcome everybody. It's a bit of a wet and gloomy morning outside, so probably just as well we're inside, hopefully in the warm. So welcome to the very first webinar that the Ely Diocese Safeguarding team have organised as part of safeguarding season. We're really fortunate and thankful that we have Vickie Crompton here from the Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Service. So I'll get her to do her introduction just before she starts the presentation. My name is Lisa Pearson. I'm one of the Assistant Safeguarding Advisors with the Ely Diocese, and I'm also the Cathedral Safeguarding Advisor. So today we're going to have a presentation by Vickie. Safeguarding season started yesterday and we had a really good event. It was the Loud Fence event at Ely Cathedral. It was really well attended. For those that aren't aware, there is a loud fence installation at the cathedral. It's through the main entrance on the right hand side. This is an opportunity for a visible display of support and solidarity for those that have been affected by abuse. So if you would like to attend the cathedral and place a ribbon on the fence, it's actually some gates, just as I say, to the right. You're more than welcome to do that. We have some ribbons on there. It's actually on the Cathedral Facebook page this morning as well. You can see some ribbons being put on the fence. If you're not able to attend, it's the Christmas fair starts Thursday, so I think it's going to be a very busy place to go to, the cathedral. There is an opportunity to place a virtual ribbon. So if you were to go onto the cathedral or the diocesan website, you will be able to follow the link and you can leave a message. It is anonymous, but you can always leave your name if you wish. And they will be picked up and a ribbon will be placed on the fence on your behalf. So as I say, really good opportunity there to show our support to victims and survivors of abuse. So as I say, today we've got the Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Service here to do a presentation. The rest of the week, this is the first of 8 webinars that we've been able to put on. So really thankful to our partner agencies and organisations, both local and national, who have very kindly put their time into create and put together a presentation, but also be here this morning. So the plan is that the webinar will last for approximately an hour, hour and a half. So due to finish no later than 11:30, and may well finish slightly earlier than that. If you have any questions throughout the presentation that you would like to ask, I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with the use of Zoom, but at the bottom of your screen, you will see there is a tab which says Q&A. If you type your question into that, that will come through to myself and Vickie, and we'll be able to look at your question. So nobody else who is attending the webinar will be able to see the question. Vickie has said that she will also stop periodically during her presentation, so there's an opportunity for questions to be asked then, but again, through the Q&A tab. So as I say, if you want to wait for that, you might find the actual answer to your question does come up through the presentation. So we are particularly mindful, obviously, today that we're going to be discussing a topic that is or can be emotive and certainly challenging for some. You know, we acknowledge that we all come from different backgrounds. We all have been exposed to different experiences throughout our lives. So if you or anybody that you know has been affected by these or similar issues, please do remember that there is support available from a number of organisations. So not only from the safeguarding team, there is a duty phone number on our website that you can call and leave a message, and a member of the safeguarding team will call you back. But also on our website, there is a resource page with other support organisation contact details, including safe spaces and survivor voices. So please, you're not on your own. We are very much here to support you. And today is very much about thinking about our own self-care and our own welfare. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is hand you over to Vickie, if she'd like to introduce herself, and then we'll have the presentation. So thank you so much.
No worries. Hi everyone, thank you for coming today. It's a really miserable day out there today, isn't it? So I've been asked to talk about what people can do if they're concerned about a friend or family member that's been abused. My name is Vickie Crompton. So the Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Partnership, not only do we commission services, we run services for victims of domestic violence and abuse, and we also bring services together to ensure a more coordinated response when someone needs help and support for domestic abuse or sexual violence. So I've been doing this for around 12 years. Thank you, Lisa, for the bit of housekeeping. It's really helpful. Most of us will know someone who's been affected by domestic abuse or may be affected by domestic abuse ourselves. Be really kind to yourself. If you need to step away, please do so. Feel free to do so. As Lisa said, there are services and support out there. Just be aware of who might also be listening to the webinar. There's nothing particularly explicit, but some of it might be quite triggering for some people. So really, I think the reason I've been asked here is because it really isn't easy to know how to support that friend or the loved one that's experienced domestic abuse. So I'm quite an expert on domestic abuse. I've been doing it a very long time. I still know that if it was a friend or a loved one of mine, that I would find that really, really difficult to deal with and to know what to do next, because it's very different looking at it professionally than personally. But I think everyone can make a difference. It's a really difficult thing to think about, and we're going to talk about how you can make decisions that will protect your friend or your loved one. And your first instinct will be to protect them, to step in, but we need to realise that sometimes intervening has a potential to do more harm than good. It doesn't mean you should ignore it. There are things you can do, and we're going to talk about them. Also, while it is a gendered crime, more women are affected by domestic abuse from men than the other way around. Men and women do experience domestic abuse and violence. And if you witness an assault, obviously, well, not obviously, it's about calling the police on 999 if you think someone's at immediate risk of harm. And that's just really to say that you really love your loved ones and your friends, obviously, and your family. And that's really, really important to hold on to, because that's probably the most important thing that you can offer that person. So if you think about what's the definition of domestic abuse, the Home Office have got a definition of domestic abuse. They revised it last year. It's essentially, so by law, it's if someone's 16 or over. We know it happens to younger people, and that there are intimate relationships that can be abusive under the age of 16. We have got young people's specialist services. And the important thing is that those people are personally connected. And I know that, so quite often in the media, we'll see domestic abuse where it's about intimate partners or previous or ex-intimate partners, but it does also include family members. So it also includes relatives. So it might be a son to their mum, it could be a mum to the daughter, could be sisters, could be brothers. So that family relationship can also be domestically abusive, and all of our services will work where that's the dynamic and that's the case. It's considered abusive if it's physical or sexual. I think they're the sort of obvious ones that come to mind. It could be violent or threatening behaviour. We'll talk about controlling and coercive behaviour. So we've got a film to show you that will really help understand that, and about economic abuse. So it's beyond financial abuse. It's about someone not allowing the other person to have resources to live an independent life. And then psychological, emotional and other abuse. It's still considered domestic abuse, whether it's a single incident or a course of conduct, but we know that humans aren't perfect, and sometimes there'll be some of these behaviours may occur as a one-off. Generally, when we're looking at domestic abuse across the county, it's about that pattern of incidents, and by the time people are reaching our services, there's a definite pattern there. So it may be regarded as abusive, even if it's through a third person, such as a child. We'll talk more about economic abuse a bit later, but as I said, it's the adverse effects on the person's ability to acquire, use, or maintain money, property, goods, or services. We'll talk about controlling behaviour in a bit. It's exactly what it sounds like. So it's a range of acts designed to make that person subordinate and or dependent on them. And that's by isolating them from support. They may exploit their resources for personal gain, depriving them of what they need to be independent, to make sure that they stay in that relationship. And coercive behaviour is that pattern. So it could be assault, threats, humiliation, intimidation, that's used to harm, punish, or frighten that victim. And we'll look more at that. That sounds really complex, but we'll look at it and it will become quite clear. And then for the first time, we used to talk about children experiencing domestic abuse or witnessing domestic abuse when they're in the home. Now, by law, the child is considered a victim of domestic abuse in their own right, where they see, hear, or experience the effects of domestic abuse between those people. They can be related to either person in that relationship, and it also covers someone who might have parental responsibility, so it could be a relative. And in this context, child is under the age of 18. Sorry, there's a fire alarm going off. It's a test, I'm sure. Okay, so as we said, those types of domestic abuse, just go through them again. So psychological, that could be intimidation, threats, it could be blackmail, it could be a threat of suicide. We see quite often for our high risk cases, the abusive partner will threaten suicide if that person leaves. Physicals, that might be hitting, kicking, pushing, grabbing, could even be reckless driving. Obviously sexual assaults, and then financials, that might be withholding money or preventing employment or stealing from that victim. Controlling behaviour, so they might be jealous or possessive, may isolate from friends and family. It's very clever how that builds up over time. So it may be starting with, I really love you, spend the evening with me, don't worry about your friends, and it sort of progresses from there, but we'll look at that later. They may insist on being with them all the time and not let them go anywhere on their own. They may find that there's constant criticism, and whatever they do, they don't make the right decision. They might get angry over something that seems from the outside that's quite minor. And that controlling finances. So money really is used quite extensively to abuse another person. So we've got a short film that worked earlier.
I felt like I was going mad. No one else could see what was going on.
I never thought anything like this could happen to me.
Coercive control is a pattern of deliberate abuse, over time leaving the victim intimidated, dependent, and isolated. It can be hard to see, but coercive control is a crime.
He's such a handsome man. When we were first married, he charmed everyone. I felt so lucky. I couldn't put my finger on when it changed. It wasn't one thing he did. It happened bit by bit.
Why are you wearing that dress?
I could never predict what would upset him.
Those heels, I can't stand the sound they make.
From the outside, we look like the perfect couple, a teacher married to a doctor. But inside, I feel like a hostage. He told me who I'm allowed to talk to and who I'm not allowed to talk to. And then he acted like it was all just a joke. It wasn't. He's deadly serious. He gets the kids to tell him who I see and where I go. He told me he'd put hidden cameras in the house to watch me when no one's there.
After I passed my accountancy exams, I had a good salary. But he controlled every penny I spent. He even kept a spreadsheet. In the supermarket, I'd stand in front of the cereals, scared stiff about what he might do if I chose the wrong kind.
He complains that I don't call him enough, then that I call him too much. He gets into my email and deletes things, and he sends messages from my account.
You're a useless mother. You get everything wrong. You're losing it.
The way he undermines me, it makes me doubt myself. What if I make mistakes in front of the class? Is it all in my head?
He'd smash a plate right beside me and then laugh at me when I flinched. He knew he didn't have to hit me to keep me under control. He'd get angry, then apologise.
You know I love you, but you make me lose my temper. It's your fault.
I thought I'd be safe if I towed the line.
He kept coming to see me at my work, to check up on me. My colleagues thought it was sweet that he was so attentive. He told them,
She needs a lot of attention. She's a wee bit unstable.
I felt too ashamed to tell them what's going on at home. So I left my job. It's like I don't know who I am anymore.
It got so I couldn't go out at all, not even into the garden. He'd hide my medication to punish me. And when his family came round, he acted like husband of the year. I just couldn't bear to tell him the truth. I had no one to talk to.
He says I hurt him. He says he'll kill himself. I feel so guilty. He told me if I ever try to leave him,
I'll cancel your visa. You'll have nowhere to go. You'll bring shame and dishonor on the family. You'll never see the kids again.
I'm trapped. What have I done wrong?
All it took was one person to ask me the right questions. Then I began to open up. I started to see I'm not mad. I started to see the patterns in what he did to me. It's taking a long time to find myself again. Yesterday, someone offered me a cup of tea, and I automatically asked, am I allowed?
Coercive control is against the law. It's a pattern of behaviour that's not obvious at first, but does real damage. And it's a crime.
I wish there was someone I could talk to.
When one person listened to me and believed me, I started to get my life back.
Lisa, do we have anything in the chat?
No, I can't see anything at the moment in chat. No.
Okay, no worries, thanks. So I know that video can be quite powerful. I think it's really good at demonstrating how all those little, what seem like little things come together. I think every time I've seen that video, I see something different every time. I think the bit that really gets me is when she's in front of the cereal and she says she's scared stiff about which one to choose. So if you imagine the person in that relationship that's been abused, actually they're having that constant questioning over the decisions they make, and that's exhausting. So they will be worried about what decision to make next. So we think she had that constant criticism, that isolation. We talked about not having use of money. We talked about the spreadsheets in the film, and it really is a deprivation of that person's freedom. So it's that humiliation, intimidation is there, and that is part of the control tactics of the abusive person. Excuse me. So you might think, what's some of the signs? How would I know if this was my friend? And I'm not saying that this is definitely the case in all of these, but these might be some of the things that certainly for me would make my neck prick a little bit. So do they change their behaviour in front of their partner? Is there that obvious change in behaviour? Do they seem nervous when they're with their partner? Is it that walking on eggshells that you can sort of tentatively feel, can't you? If you're in someone else's house and it feels like you're walking on eggshells. Have they changed? Do they seem less confident or frightened and they're not their usual self? If you're out with them, do they text or call constantly to find out where they are and when they'll be back and that sort of thing? And have they started to cancel plans at the last minute with you or make excuses? And that's part of the isolation tactic, will be to say, I don't want you to go out. So that might have started happening. Are they constantly apologising for their partner's behaviour? So if their partner does do something, sometimes part of that isolation tactic is to be rude to family and friends so that people don't get invited anymore. Are they constantly apologising for their partner's behaviour? Are there bruises, are there injuries that you weren't convinced about those explanations that you were given? Excuse me. Have they changed their appearance? Is there a difference in how they appear? Are they dressing more conservatively? Have they stopped wearing makeup? Is there something just a little bit off? They might change the way they're using their social networking sites. And obviously that could be for all sorts of reasons, but it's thinking about it in the round. Has that person been taking more time off sick from usual if it's a work colleague? So just something that doesn't feel right. So just going to go into economic abuse. I think one of the things that sometimes the media portrays is that domestic abuse happens to people of lower socioeconomic status. This is something that happens in deprived households and deprived families, and that's absolutely not the case. Anyone could be at risk of an abusive partner or an abusive family member. I just want to show this video about economic abuse because this might resonate. That's the word I'm looking for. It might resonate with some people. And just looking at where this lady started and how easy, but over a period of time, she got trapped into that abusive relationship and being abused by a partner. It does start off quite quiet.
It's a gradual process. Little by little, bit by bit. It's a cliche, I know, but he was the love of my life. We got married, new house in the country, I was pregnant, life was good. He thought I should leave my job. I was a bit sad, but the guys gave me a great send-off. 7 pounds, 6 ounces. A healthy baby boy. We called him Archie. And he was right. I could now stay home and look after our son. It's expensive having a baby. I was exhausted and lonely. So he offers to help by managing all the bills. Funny how you don't even really notice it at first. Then he suggested that I put all of my life savings into our joint account. Now we can pay off the mortgage quicker. He keeps telling me that it's not his money or my money, but it's our money. Little by little. Then he says that we need to be more careful with our spending. He puts me on a strict budget. I get £30 a week to pay for everything. I can't afford the petrol to take Archie to school. He just says that the walk is good for us. Bit by bit. He asks to see receipts for everything. He questions me on where I've been, who I've met, what I've spent. He took all my bank cards, and when I tried to access our bank account, I discovered that he's changed all the passwords. I tried to discuss it with him, but he just gets angry. He screams at me, slams doors, tells me I'm mad. His shouting face up.
blames me. He says it's my fault that I'm forgetful, that I'm stupid. I literally have to beg him for money. For food, petrol, everything. Sometimes I go hungry just so I don't have to ask. I'm scared. I've got no one to talk to. He hasn't actually hit me, so no one would believe me. I don't know what to do. I just want to get Archie and go, but I can't. I have no money and no way out. It's a gradual process.
So I think that's really powerful film, just describing how that may happen little by little bit and bit by bit. It doesn't happen on a first date. So that person they might be scared that there'll be violence or that their children aren't safe. They may think it's their fault, and that if they change, all they have to do is change. If they just make that person happy, and actually that's impossible, because then the rules will change. So there'll always be something that they do wrong. They cannot get this right, because that's not the game. They'll be confused about their feelings. So they love that person, they married that person, but they hate the abuse. So what they want, what most people want, isn't for the relationship to end, but for the abuse to stop. And they may be hoping that that partner's good side will come back. And quite often we'll see a cycle. So we'll see it getting to the point where someone wants to leave, or there's an incident and someone calls the police. If you imagine that as being like a red continuum in a circle, and then that person will say, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm going to get help, I didn't mean to do this or that, and excuse their behaviour, I promise it'll be better next time. And then it's all good for a while. And so that bit where it's good could last months, it could last weeks, it could last days, it could last hours. But slowly, little by little, it will get back to being sort of, if you think about an amber colour, so if you think about that as being walking on eggshells, where the rules start coming back in, where those criticisms and humiliations start coming back in, and then it will go to red again at some point. And that cycle will continue a number of times, because there is that infinite hope that that person will stop abusing them. So they may be dependent on that abuser for money. So you might have a friend that's actually, you think, actually, you want an all right salary, you should have money. Why is there no money here? And you used to be able to have money. They'll also depend on their emotional support for any care. So if we think about people with care and support needs, the abusive person might be someone that's also providing care and support needs, or health needs. People feel ashamed and guilty and embarrassed that they're suffering from domestic abuse, that they're being subjected to abuse, and it's never their fault, it's always the abuser's fault. But the abusive person will have made them feel shame and guilt and embarrassment, and they'll have been made to feel like that. And that's quite often why people won't disclose what's happening to them, because they think it's their fault, because they've been told it's their fault. They'll also worry about what will happen if they ask for help. So what's those consequences of the abusive person knowing that they've asked for help? And will people believe them? Or are they just going to say, well, if only you didn't do this or you didn't do that? So there are lots and lots of reasons that people won't disclose what's happening to them. So how can you ask someone about domestic abuse? If you've got a friend or a family member and you're worried about this, so it may be about waiting for them when they're on their own. If you do have an opportunity with them on their own, giving them a time for them to open up. So you might have to ask them a few times before they'll talk to you. they're not necessarily going to come out and say, yes, you're right, I'm being abused the first time you ask. So you might have to ask a few times because they'll be worried about the consequences of telling you. It's always good to be really direct. So we were talking about the shame and embarrassment. It's really important to be direct. So I'm worried about you because, or I'm worried about your safety, or I've noticed this. It's always good to be really, really direct and not embarrassed to ask. And don't judge them, believe what they say. So it's not their fault. It's the abusive person's fault that they've been abused, but it's really, really important that you believe them. They may say, no, everything's fine, and you think, I'm not sure everything's fine. But just take it and then ask again on a different occasion if you feel like you need to. But the most important thing is not judging it. So not saying, oh, why, what happened? So the minute you start saying what happened before you got hit, for example, or what happened before this, implies that the person being abused has done something and that was a consequence. And the majority of the time they haven't. And in any case, whatever they've done doesn't justify that abuse. So reassure them that abuse is never their fault, that sits with the abusive person, that you're there for them. In terms of giving support, concentrate on how do you give that support and how do you build up their confidence, and how can you be there for when they're ready to take whatever step they need to take next. So it might be about how do you help them to keep contact with people outside the home. How can you be that safe person? And you may have to be really, really patient. It can take a long time for someone to understand they're being abused, and one day it may just click. So don't try and force their decisions. They're already being controlled by one person. Don't be another person in their life that's trying to force them to make decisions. And what we looked earlier, didn't we, at some of the videos and about difficulties making decisions. That patience is really, really important. You can encourage them to keep a diary of anything that happens and to tell other people about it. So they might want to report any injuries to a GP because then they've got it on record if they know it in the future. They might want to report to the police, but they need to think that through. If they go to the police will then go to the abusive person to ask what's happened. They've got a duty to investigate that crime. And some people don't want to do that. They would rather go to specialist services and see how they can keep themselves safe. The thing not to do is not to tell them what to do. They are human beings with their own ability to make decisions. And they might not be decisions you agree with, and they might not be the decisions you would make, but they're making the best decisions to survive each day. When you've spoken to them, they're still alive. For some people, it is as dramatic as that, and they know that if they try to leave, there are threats. So it might be threats to kill dogs, threats to damage the home, it might be threats against relatives. So they need to make those decisions at the right time for them and doing it as safely as possible. So don't put pressure on them to leave their partner. This can be the most dangerous time for a victim. So if someone is going to leave an abusive partner, they need to do it as safely as possible with as much information as they can. Try not to say bad things about their partner. So they still love that person, even if it's really hard to see why. But it also will make them more embarrassed that they still love that person, and we don't want them to be shamed and embarrassed that they still love that person, and then they're going to be less happy to talk to you about what's happened. So try and be quite neutral about the person. You might offer to keep a set of keys or important documents such as passports or benefits, money. So if the person does make a decision that they want to leave, they can keep copies of those documents or a set of keys or whatever with you in case they need it if they had to flee. One of the big nightmares if someone leaves without all those documents is getting hold of those documents that you need going forward. If they have been hurt, you could have to go to the hospital with them. You go to their GP with them or another professional that they could talk to. So they might want to go to a counsellor, they might want to go to our specialist domestic abuse services, offer to support them, and how can you help them get there? You might offer, if they're at your house, that they call from your phone to a specialist support services so nothing shows up on their phone. Offer to help tell the police what's happened with them if that's something they want to do. So how can you accompany them to do that? And help making a safety plan. So where are they most safe? And we've got details of that on our website, and the details are at the end. If someone is preparing to leave, they need to do it while the abuser's not around. They need to consider that they need to take documents with them. it's really important that people take their children with them. If they don't do that, it may be hard to get the children back and living with them in the future. So it's always important to try and keep their children with them. If they do that, making sure that children's teachers know what's happening, who's picking up the children in the future, those sorts of things. And it may be that they need a separate bank account or put aside some money to try and squirrel that away. I think actually, now that we're living where everything is so automated, how often do we use cash? So in the olden days, get me, I'm old. In the olden days, someone might be able to squirrel some money away. That's even harder now with everything being electronic, if everyone's paying on a card or with Apple Pay. So it's just worth thinking about that. Essentially, you can't force another human to do anything as much as you might think it's in their best interests. I think the most important thing is to be patient and kind. And we're all, lots of us are doers, and we want to change the situation and we want to help that person. But the most important thing is to be kind and believe in them and not judging them for the decisions they're making, even if you really don't agree with those decisions. Being there for them when they're ready. So it may not be this week, it may not be this month, it might be later in the year, but if you're there for them when they're ready and they are able to contact you, it's likely that if you're the most supportive person in their lives, they're the person that the abuser will try and isolate you from, because they're the ones that will help. So don't let them isolate them, if that makes sense. So don't be that person. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Don't let them isolate your friend in regards of you'll still be there. So every time they come to you, you're still there. You're not questioning why they haven't contacted you, those sorts of things, and you haven't shut them off. So it's really, really important to be there. There are lots of local support services. So there is a free phone number, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. That's the top one that people can access. There's Peterborough Women's Aid, also Cambridge Women's Aid. There's a lot of lists on the safeguarding website from the diocese. And they're all listed on our website. So that's at www.camsdasv.org.uk. There's a whole wealth of information there if you want to look up more information. And then there are also national support lines that people can contact. So there's National Domestic Abuse Helpline, the Men's Advice Line, it's Carmen Nirvana if you think it's honour-based violence. Got Gallup for LGBTQ+ support. Hourglass are there for older people. And Respect to their, if someone's disclosed to you they're concerned about their behaviour towards their partner, the Respect phone line is for men who are concerned about their behaviour in relationships. We've got a whole wealth of posters and information. You can either download those from our website and put them up in areas where you may have access to some public areas, getting that information out there so that people can see that and see where the services are. You can either download from the website or you can get in touch with me via the website, and I can send you some posters that you could put up. So I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see if anyone's got any questions.
I've got no questions in the Q&A tab, but obviously there's an opportunity now, if anyone would like to ask any questions, to write one now. I think for me personally, I think the webinars this week are really an opportunity to sort of refresh our own knowledge and skills, particularly if we come from a safeguarding background and we're working in sort of like the safeguarding team with the parish safeguarding officers, but also just like you say, with family and friends. I think I've certainly learnt things today. I think the videos that you put on around the controlling and the coercive and the economic abuse I found particularly informative and actually very impactful, particularly the economic abuse. So they're new to me, so I appreciate you showing those today, and I hope everybody has got something out of the presentation today. There are no questions at the moment, so I'm taking it everybody is happy with the information that they've been provided by Vickie. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Vickie very much for her time this morning and for putting that presentation together. As Vickie said, there are organisations, there are support groups out there. So please go on either our website or the Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence website and have those contact numbers available. All right, I've got
James.
James. You've raised your hand, but James, I'm not sure that you're going to be able to speak. You probably, unless you might need to put it in the Q&A. I'll wait and see if he, oh, there we go. Let me see. Oh, no, he was just trying to say thank you.
Oh,
That's
you're
lovely.
welcome, James.
That's lovely.
If
Yeah.
there's anything we can do to help, just give us a shout.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I say, I hope everybody got something out of today. So we do have some further webinars that have been planned for this week. So this afternoon, we've got the Independent Domestic Violence Advisory Service. So again, it's the insight into the role of the IDVA, supporting male and female domestic abuse victims. So again, really goes well with the presentation from Vickie this morning. And then tomorrow morning, we have Jane Chavu from Survivor Voices talking about sort of the trustworthy and trauma sensitive. How can we receive that disclosure, offer a safe space, be seen and be heard and supported? So Jane is herself a victim of abuse within the church. So she was at the Loud Fence event yesterday all day, and also attended the Evensong and the parish safeguarding event in the evening. So really, if you haven't signed up to listen to Jane, then please do. We have tomorrow afternoon hate crime awareness. So Tiff Lane from the police, understanding a little bit more about what hate crime is, how it can affect individuals and communities, and why it is so important to recognise this, but also to report it. Thursday morning, we've got the Working Together to Safeguard Children, Adults and Adult Board, understanding a little bit about their role and some current issues that are ongoing, and some tools, etc., that we can use, and some case reviews as well. So that would be really interesting to listen to. In the afternoon, we have a theology of safeguarding. So we have the Archdeacon Richard Harlow for Huntingdon and Wisbech. He's going to be talking around sort of the theology and safeguarding. And then Friday morning, safeguarding children and vulnerable adults who potentially are victims of modern slavery and exploitation, including county lines. So this is by the CLUA initiative. They have done, I think they were recently actually at the cathedral, and we have had some training delivered across the parishes in relation to this subject. But again, opportunity there to listen to Caroline Virgo, who's the director there. And then at 1 o'clock, we've very luckily been able to get a video recording from Dr. Lisa Oakley. She is the Associate Professor of Applied Psychology with the University of Chester, and she's also the chair of the Church of England Working Group into Spiritual Abuse. So she has very kindly put together, she unfortunately wasn't able to be present on Friday, but she has put together a video around what spiritual abuse is, what is the impact of spiritual abuse, and what features a good response. And we've had a really good take up on that particular presentation. But as I say, they're all available on our website and also on the cathedral website. You need to register for each one separately. So please, if you have an opportunity, I appreciate lives are busy, we have work, family commitments, but if you are able to sign up for any, that would be great. Andrew's asking for a possible copy of the slides. I don't know, Vickie, the video itself, what we're hoping to do is it will be, obviously it's going to be kept by the safeguarding team. For those that perhaps haven't managed to attend today's webinar, we're going to have a meeting to discuss how we can get the video out to other people, whether that's we put on specific events in the evenings or weekends, maybe to support that. I don't know, Vickie, what your thoughts are around the actual slides being sent out.
You can have it.
Thank you very much. Okay, so if any
Andrew, I've just put my email address in the chat, so if anyone else other than Andrew, I don't mind, if they want to contact me, I'll just send you a copy.
Brilliant. Okay, and I've got a copy as well. Brilliant. Okay then, so once again, thank you, Vickie, and thank you everybody for attending this webinar this morning. I hope you've all got something out of it, and hopefully see you again at some of the other webinars. So many thanks then.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Bye.